Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the stream. The focus today is making a Reaper 7 FAQ. Oh yeah, just between you and I really thought that the theme assembler was what the Reaper 7 theme would be based on. Like, there's a lot of similar features in here, but being able to change every possible setting for, or just having this option of like 20 different volume knobs is super cool. And this was so close to being finished. I don't know why they didn't just use this as the actual Reaper theme. Kind of weird, but they didn't do it. And it's a bit of a shame because this was a super cool theme that was like, I don't know, 90% done. Back to the default. What do the different preferences settings for fixed item lanes mean? I was investigating this the other day, yesterday, and I was having a real hard time figuring out these different settings here, add lanes and add lanes, layer new lanes. I thought it was to do with the kind of the solo buttons and like which lanes would be played back. But there's 3 or 4 different settings for the tracks, for the project that changed how that worked. And so it's not so straightforward. And these also didn't seem to override. It didn't seem to override these on a per track basis or anything like that. I'm probably just as confused as you are there. Mike has done videos on this stuff. There's either some bugs with it or I'm just greatly misunderstanding some of the things. So like, for example, I can set it up in a way that the add lanes, layer new lanes works as a looper. So I can play something in, play another note, and it plays on top of that. But then when I go into fixed lanes view, it only goes to the last played track. So there's a difference between lanes collapsed and lanes visible that totally breaks that layering sort of workflow. And it also didn't work with loop recording, which is really weird. We're in this sort of phase where we've got like 3 different ways to record takes in addition to the fixed lanes, which can have the other versions kind of inside of that. So many different preferences and options that affect recording into takes or layers or lanes, with items overlapping, with items not overlapping, with items mixing or not. There's a lot of factors. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Hopefully it just is helpful that I'm as confused as you are. Channel names for those videos. That channel might be called Learning Reaper, and Let's Talk About Reaper is the other channel. Windows dark mode would be amazing. I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. It was, version 7 was the perfect time to do it, but I've experimented with some of the Windows theming stuff, and it fixes one thing and breaks 3 others. Has he said anything about Windows dark mode? It's all because of the bones of Reaper is this ancient Windows thing, API, I guess. The equivalent on Mac just kind of gets more updates. It looks a little bit better. It can do things like rounded corners and transparency and dark mode and light mode, and even changing depending on the time of day. So it just tends to look a little bit nicer, softer. But then there's a million other Mac specific issues. The Win32 API, I'm guessing that's what it's called. I always forget. The thing still works, and changing it will break Reaper. And that's the main thing they're trying to avoid. There's so much backwards compatibility built into Reaper, and it partly because certain things on Windows never change, and Windows is really good about backwards compatibility, at least for the deep stuff in general. It helps keep Reaper small. I don't like the new spacer at all, a bit of a disappointment. It's optional. I think they might add in names to them. I don't know. I've gotten really used to just hiding everything I don't want to see and just forcing myself to use keyboard shortcuts for that stuff. Reaper on a Steam Deck might be Cool. If it has a USB port, you could get a USB mic in there, or maybe any class compliant audio interface. Let's add in a poll. Okay, I just put in a poll. We're gonna give that a couple minutes. Seems totally glitchy and incomplete. I would say, yeah, incomplete, but it's been stable for me. I haven't any crashes. I was tempted to update to Sonoma this morning, but I knew that would be a mistake. My audio interface would probably stop working, and then I wouldn't be able to stream. If I choose to stick with the Reaper 6 theme, what will that prevent or hinder any new feature working correctly? I don't think so. The track lanes thing will still appear. What is missing though? So let's say we're here. I go to visual spacer before tracks. How does that look in a different theme? I actually don't think I've checked this yet. So let's go to Reaper 6. Yeah, visual spacers is kind of the only thing added. I think that might have looked different. I think Reaper 6 theme is going to look fine. So like track lanes, that's still here in the Reaper 6 theme. Here's the thing, I'll just ask this question to the chat. How do you think this should work? So if you've got two items on different lanes and you've got them set so that all lanes play, right, play all lanes, and then you collapse this down by shift clicking to show only one lane, should you still get all lanes? Play all lanes, shift click to not show all lanes. I feel like that should still work. The other thing you can do is turn off fixed lane comping. It'll go back to kind of the normal view. Not sure if it actually sounds different. That versus... Yeah, I think that it does actually sound different. Yeah, this crossfade gets messed up. I'm gonna end the poll, and it seems like 73% of the audience today, right now, already updated. Mark Lar 3 says, not a fan of early adopting software, even if it's just an update. I'd rather wait a few weeks. Yeah, and that's a good point. And generally, I agree with that. Yeah, on the day of release, like, I mean, even with Reaper, you saw that they, an hour or something after release, they had to 7.001 update. Do I use any other DAW beside Reaper? Isotope RX is the closest thing. I've got Audacity installed. I actually wanted to process an image with audio effects, but it didn't really turn out the way I was hoping for. I wanted to do some new t-shirt designs, but using audio effects to process the REAPERBlog logo, it didn't really work. What's my honest opinion of the Reaper 7 theme? It needs more work, and they should have waited because, yeah, now I've got to do like damage control. I got to convince people that it's okay. Do I think they rushed 7 a bit? Kind of. I mean, last week I was saying that it's going to be a while away. But favorite new feature overall? I haven't even explored them all. I do really like the fixed lane comping, but even that, I'm like wondering if I'm using it right in a way or something. Like Reaper 7 looks ugly on Windows. I would say it looks a bit ugly on Mac as well. I'm not a fan of this, this yellow when you're in this comping mode. I'm not a fan of that color or the yellow buttons. That will be something we can change. I'm not sure if it currently is, these images. That should be something that can be changed per theme. Track fixed lane button, tracks fixed lane button when only this lane plays. Their fallback code drawn controls if the theme does not supply these images, which are called lane solo off, lane solo on, lane solo off indicator, lane solo on indicator, lane solo up, lane solo down, fixed lanes big, fixed lanes small, fixed lanes 1. So if you're making a theme, these are the names of the images to use. Could the rushed update be due to pressure from the latest Bitwig update? I don't know. Probably not. I don't think they really look at what the other companies are doing too much. I'm a lurker that really likes your content. Are you aware there's a Reaper plugin that can save settings and key map and sync them with a GitHub directory? Are you asking me or telling me? In general, you don't need to export your preferences. You can just grab the INI files because they're written to automatically when you make a change. If I had to guess of who made a tool like that, I would guess Aaron Senden has made a tool for that, which is probably not going to be a script inside of Reaper. If anyone has a tool, he probably has a tool for that. Or maybe NVK. Or maybe LKC. One of the new features in Reaper 7 is the effects containers. And effects containers are kind of effects chains. Within effects chains, you can put a box around a bunch of effects and have them in series and parallel and do all kinds of weird things. But sometimes the audio signal flow gets confusing. And so on this track here, I'll play the sound. Here's the full effects chain. EQ, container, bit crusher, volume, and then in parallel, a delay in pitch and another delay in pitch, and they're panned opposites. And then they're coming out of the container into another volume control. When you're doing like a left and right chain or multiple channel chain, you want to have them combine. You want to put the containers inside of another container. And you can go pretty deep with it, but the window keeps getting smaller and smaller. So it's, yeah, it's a little weird. But what does that actually look like in terms of signal flow? There is a great script from Sexton called Paranormal Effects Router. So when the track is selected, you can see a visual representation of the signal flow. And it's interactive. You can move things around. You can add effects. You can change the panning and the dry-wet controls and some of the parameters inside of the plugin. So for the volume pan, there's a volume. He's working on this. He's updated this again since what you're seeing here, I think. I didn't update my repack. But yeah, this is the signal flow. It's a really cool way of working. If you are struggling to understand the signal flow going through containers, series, parallel, paranormal effects router script is very helpful. So Stephen was asking me in the live chat here what the benefit of using containers is versus multiple tracks, sends. So there isn't things like feedback loops within here, but one thing that is important here is being able to link parameters to other parameters for modulation, for automation, for macros. So let's add in another effect. Let's put in my macro. So put in my the REAPERBlog macro controller. This effect it's just 5 knobs. It doesn't process audio in any way, but it gives you something that you can link things to. So from the container, let's say we take the, I don't know, delay time. I do think they need to clean this up a bit. The 3 param menus in a row. So this is the one for the last selected track. We're going to map to container parameter. And then the container parameter length is inside of a container. So then it needs to go to another container parameter. So now it's here. Last touch, we'll go to parameter modulation. And in here, we can link to another control. So we can go to my macro controller and macro 1. And now let's pop that out and show the container. Now macro 1 controls the length, the delay time essentially, which is not a great use of it because of the snapping. But those are the steps you have to go through for modulation or for parameter control. Using this macro controller, you can map multiple functions to this. So we could take the full range pitch offset, go to map to control, and then touch it again, map to control. It's kind of annoying. I think it's only because it's in multiple containers. Finally, should be able to go here and link this to macro 1, and maybe set the scale to 40%, set the offset to, I don't know, here. But now we change this, it changes multiple things at once. It's complicated. Maybe this will improve. Hopefully this, like, they can just put in 8 to 16 knobs right at the top of the container. But within Reaper, using only Reaper stock plugins, you can do some crazy stuff with this. But it is complicated, and I don't think there's really too many ways to make that faster right now. They got to improve that. Drag and drop would be amazing. Yeah, if you take something like snapheap, snapheap is so simple. You want parallel chains? There, one button. You want to take a gain and a limiter and take the release and the, let's just link that to that. Grab this thing, drag that up, like this one, drag that down, and they're linked. And they can work in opposite directions with different amounts, and done. I don't think there's a more simple sort of container thing than that. The containers in Reaper 7 are also missing all the modulators. Like, having the modulators right here is so convenient. Just put in an LFO, link this LFO to, I don't know, mix. And now that mix control is moving. And let's set this to bipolar. There we go. If you're doing complex effects chains, snapheap is so good. It's worth getting. Can you rename container? Yeah. So it should be like any other effect. Right click and go to rename effects instance. Yeah. So pretty simple. Someone said, I envy the silky smooth zoom in and zoom out on Mac. It's so clunky on PC. Yes, that's one reason I don't use Windows for making videos anymore. There is no clean zoom in and out. It gets pixelated very quickly. Have I used Reaper on Linux? I haven't at all. Yeah, not too interested in Linux. I think the idea of being able to run Reaper on a Raspberry Pi is cool in a way. It's a novelty, but there's no practical use for me. Do I have experience with EasyDrummer in Reaper? Yeah, I've mostly with EasyDrummer 2. I don't have the newest version, and I've done a bunch of videos on that. Maybe 5 different videos about that. EasyDrummer 2 is really good. I think 3 is better. Is there a special reason why you edit videos in Reaper? I think Kenny uses ScreenFlow to record and edit, same as Alejandro. I used to. ScreenFlow was an additional piece of software that I did not enjoy paying for. Once you add in a camera to your footage in ScreenFlow, at least at the time I was using it, everything slows to a crawl once the edit gets complicated. And there are certain things that were just taking way too long to do in ScreenFlow. The audio processing was really bad. I used to have to export my audio after the main chunk of editing was done, process it with the effects chain, send it back. It was just way too many steps. I'm sure it's gotten better, but it was like every year you got to pay a pretty expensive upgrade cost. You couldn't stay on an older operating system. I was using ScreenFlow for probably 2015 to 2017, maybe 2018. When Reaper 5 came out, I had, with the Reaper 5 betas, video editing has started to get good. I started using that. Or I think for a while I was using ScreenFlow to record, and I might have done basic edits. Like, you can do things like manipulating the cursor separately from your screen capture, which is very cool. And for a while, I was adding in just a larger cursor. But after recording for an hour, I would have to spend another half hour or something like that exporting the footage and then bringing it into Reaper, doing all the edits, and then exporting it from there. Once it was inside of Reaper, it was very fast. The next change I made was going to OBS, which doesn't need to intermediate render thing. It just records to a file. The cursor thing is cool. I don't think it's necessary to make a good video, so I don't worry about it. What about Resolve or CapCut or Final Cut Pro? I used Resolve for 1 or 2 videos. Most of these special features that it's really good at, I don't need. I'd rather focus on basics like good lighting, making sure the camera's in focus, things like that. Good audio. Working with audio in Resolve was terrible. I would have things like weird outlines on text that shouldn't be there, and a few other issues. Like I would export a video and it would come out on the left channel only for some reason, even though it's just like a single audio track that sounds through both speakers while editing. Lots of stupid stuff like that. And it's probably something really basic, but like what you have in the editor should be what you get in the export, and it wasn't like that. There's lots of weird stuff when you plug in a second monitor to Resolve. It looks weird. I should learn it. I'm sure it can do so much better than Reaper, but I think it fails at some of the basics, like good audio workflow, and some of the workflows that I've set up in Reaper for working with regions and cropping the project to just those regions is something that I wouldn't want to go without these days. I've tried a lot of different apps for editing. Most of them I don't continue with past like 1 day. Either like any of the free stuff just crashes on me constantly, or I don't know. But it's been a while since I've used anything. The last thing I tried that was half decent was called VideoProg. I made like 1 YouTube short with it. There was a bunch of missing features in that as well. I know Resolve is really good. It's just sort of like I've had some bad experiences with them on the forums before. Keyboard shortcuts, or like when I make a cut, I want the item on the right to be selected, things like that. I just don't want to get started with Resolve. I want to edit everything from one view with monitors, not having to buy some adapter so I can use a second monitor. There was so many things, like I just want to preview my video in full screen, and Reaper can do that. But to do it with Resolve, I have to buy this external device. So that was just a no-go for me. Resolve's not that supported. The Blackmagic is so split between software and hardware, a lot like Avid to me. And I don't really have a lot of trust for companies like that. Blackmagic has abandoned many cameras. There's very few things that I need to do that Reaper can't do. I'm constantly surprised by the things that Reaper can do for video editing, but I don't need to use Fusion or tracking, motion stabilizing, or anything like that for my videos. That's one of the reasons I'm not going to Resolve. It's like I can edit videos without it. I don't need to start over and learn again. Any changes or updates to video in the new Reaper? Not a ton. The main thing is video will now play from subprojects. That's pretty cool. That's been something that's been requested a lot. When working with subprojects, you used to have to copy the video file to your subprojects. Now you can have one video play out of your main project while you're working on a subproject. Will my Kontakt 6 template work for Kontakt 7 and Reaper 7? No. Kontakt 6 will work in Reaper 7 though, but I do need to update the Kontakt 7 templates. I don't know why. They don't make it easy, but basically got to start over every time Kontakt updates. You got the track template for 6 to work in Kontakt 7. Hopefully it was just as simple as just changing the name, but I don't know. Any problems with SWS extension functions like auto coloring or cycle functions? I think auto color and cycles do work, but there is some issues with SWS right now. Which functions of Reaper 7 are you going to integrate into your workflow immediately? That's a good question. The new take system I'm liking in general. That's probably the newest thing. I don't know really what else I will add to my workflows. Containers a little bit. I've been kind of forcing myself to use containers. The animated toolbar buttons I'll probably use. Other than that, not a ton. There's no real game changers for me. Jason, you like the containers even though you have snapheap? Surprised you wouldn't just use snapheap. Is there anything... Well, I guess snapheap doesn't let you do third-party effects, but everything else is just so much easier. Chris Butler says, you have to take live webinars at work and edit phrases of audio under the slideshow before posting it to YouTube. Yes. So take your recording and make an audio version of it as a separate file, bring them both into Reaper, line them up if necessary, group them, and then edit. Just if it's basic editing, like do an audio mix and then just highlight some areas with regions that you want to keep. And, just rough cuts with that probably be good. Cut out the dead air and stuff like that. Can we make peaks color instead of white, closer color as the item color, track color? I think that's a thing you can do inside of the themes. There's a page of preferences for appearance that gets disabled. This thing, this section, waveform peaks to track color, item color, take color. This is overridden by whatever theme you're using. So if the theme you're using doesn't have that, you'll have to edit that. Can you go from portable to permanent? Yes and no. On Mac, it's very simple. I just prefer the portable install because it's so simple. It's just one folder. You just put in an empty reaper.ini, run Reaper for the first time, and it fills up the folder with everything else that it needs. Otherwise, it's the resources is in a hidden folder, and it's just kind of hard to get to. Your scrolling has changed since updating to Reaper 7. Yes. So if you're on the keyboard multi-touch page, here's what I've got mine set to. I've unchecked reverse, vertical, and horizontal. I believe I used to have reverse horizontal on. Something changed with that then in my actions. So horizontal, this one I do still have reversed. You might just need to change either the preference or if you mean the vertical scrolling, then same thing. Scroll vertically, not reversed. And I'm also in the Mac preferences. I'm not doing the natural scroll. Natural scrolling is off. That's how I prefer it. So I pull down to go down, push up, I go up. And I know that's not the defaults. It scrolls reversed when hovering over the audio files from the main windows. Yeah, I was noticing that as well. I think when I first installed Reaper 7 beta a while ago. So if I'm hovering over the track controls versus here, it was going in opposite directions, or it was over the scroll bar, something like that. Something was weird, and I'm pretty sure it's this preference here, reverse vertical scroll. I want to play this track. Give me some suggestions to where to go next with it. Okay, that's what I'd like to do. Okay, so just playing it back for an audience changes it, right? I know that I made a mistake and I accidentally turned up these tom booms. I might actually turn that to like -8. But this sort of melody thing, I don't like very much now. So I'm thinking probably this and just move that over. This whole section is kind of weird because this is a 14 bar section because I was counting this as the 16. But it keeps ending up being sort of an odd number. I'm liking this loop. Which is sort of like, sounds like mechanical kind of. So this is a one-shot shaker loop. I experimented with pitching and all kinds of stuff. It ended up being frequency shifter, EQ, reverb, ladder filter, and a compressor. The compression is sidechained from the kick. The kick is a 707, I think. And for effects, I'm using just some EQ. This conga groove was a late addition out of this last night. Got re-EQ, transient shaper, and Killheart stereo. Because I wanted this wider. I wanted this to add in additional width. Just compare these two sections here. It just adds in something without really making it louder. But I should probably turn something else down as that comes in. Tambourine track is a reversed EQ and super plate on that. Seed pods crunch. And that's actually pretty much the same settings as were on the tambourine. I've got this low tom rumble, which is 707 tom, but processed. Trying to control the low end on this. I don't know if I'm really hearing much of a difference on that. I ended up just having it too loud. Hi-hat. It's just EQ. And automation. This Korg. I already showed you this effects chain with all the containers. But if I turn this off, it's probably going to be really loud. Automation is just for the frequency band 3. Just a little bit of LFO on an automation item. I've got OBXD here, Oberheim emulation with Reverbate. And I'm kind of going for like a Moog funky bass. And this was played, and then it was I messed around with the, what do you call it? The, not quantized, but I moved a lot of the notes around. And we've got another synth. Just doubling. Thicken up the lows for the sine. And then I've got this, another OBXD, compression, reverb, EQ. The compression's there for ducking from the kick, I think. Yeah, the kick ducks that. And I'm automating volume and pan on that one. This one here is another LBXD. The Arturia Plate 140. And then the last thing is Poly D. Just some EQ on it. So I'm pretty sure I've got the distortion on and the chorus too on the Poly D there. I ended up EQing it because it was just kind of a mess. All these different synths with without any EQ. I think these two. If I play back the synths, it's just kind of a mess. So just trying to manage all of those similar sounding synths by just EQ, even if they sound bad on their own. I'm pretty sure that I messed up my delay on here by trying to automate it. Oh well, doesn't matter. Probably not going to come back to this after this. I have the effects docked to the bottom of the tracks. When I scroll up and down and hover over the effects by accident, it stops scrolling and changes send volumes or scrolls through the docked effects. Okay, so if you go to the preferences, you search for ignore, this one. Preferences, editing, behavior, mouse, window under cursor, ignore mouse wheel on all faders. That's what I did. Well, these are my settings. Mouse wheel does not adjust most things, so I can scroll here without worrying about the track control panels changing. Or I can scroll here, or I can scroll here, or if I have enough tracks, I can scroll in the mixer area. But send levels do change from mouse wheel. Is there some risk of Reaper 6 themes scripts not working in Reaper 7? There's a few. There are some scripts because there is some API changes that need to be updated, but it should be done by now. Yeah, I think we're actually going to wrap up here, guys. Thank you so much for the help with making this video today. I will get this wrapped up and cut into at least one part and stuff. It was a big, long stream. How long have we been going for? 2.5 hours. So that's more than enough time. That's like 6 hours of editing. Thank you for the donations today. Thanks for all the likes and comments and being active and polite in the chat. Really, really nice to have you here. Shout out to the George Whites. Yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you next weekend, I guess. Next Friday.